Peace, family. In this part 2 of Father Divine's teachings regarding spiritual evolution, we're going to look at the office and role of the Logos, the one divine person, the source of mind and matter, the divine ancestor who surpasses and supplants all other ancestors, through whom all things have been created. We'll see how the Logos descends into the actual clay of creation and brings forth all of the forms of life in succession that were discussed in part 1. This means that you and I are not only spiritually descended from Almighty God, but we are biologically descended from Almighty God. Our bodies are descended from that first cell. Father Divine told us very clearly, I am that first cell, and I am taking you back to that time before time, when we were one, when all things were balanced and one. So that's a wonderful thing. Out of one blood, God made all flesh to dwell upon the face of the earth. It's her own flesh and blood, their own flesh and blood. And think about the fact that every breath we take, and every meal we ingest, every drink we imbibe, is literally this flesh of God, literally the most sacred communion you can imagine. There is nothing but the body of God, and we are living and breathing, moving and communing within it. It's a really profound orientation, and it is the implicate gnosis of Father Divine's teaching. Today we're going to look at the macro or big universal context in which spiritual evolution plays out. And I would like to present visual inspiration, a set of diagrammatic elaborations that will help to understand the context, the philosophical context or the physico-spiritual context in which spiritual evolution, as Father Divine describes it, as many idealist traditions describe it, how that plays out. So this one will have a little more visual context, and it would be helpful if you were able to see the visual components of the presentation. Although all of this happens as a unity, it is helpful to us to be able to think of it chronologically as something that expands or unfolds. In reality, these are co-eternal parts of God. It is not as though God evolves, but God contains within God's self the potential of all evolution, all change, all permutation, all progress, all regress. That is all contained as potential, unrealized potential within the Godhead. Personhood is contained as a potential within the impersonal. That personal realizes I am. That same one I am is the I am of every name and form that is called God. The Logos is the Buddha consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the cosmic consciousness. Can go by many, many, many names, but it is the consciousness of God. The cosmic person is the pre-incarnate Logos of the first verses of the book of John, which is echoing Platonic philosophy and Greek understandings of that word, that Greek word logos. It is something that is often not emphasized in the West, but should be, and that is that Christianity is really a merging of the Hebrew tradition coming out of the Hebrew scriptures and the Greco-European tradition, the broader Mediterranean tradition, with symbolic dying and resurrecting God figures, with in the time of Jesus with Hellenic culture or Greek culture, and therefore producing a testament that is written in Greek and that uses a lot of Greek concepts laden with Greek meanings, and those concepts do definitely include the Logos and other things like Hades, for example. Father Divine says, mathematics, or the principle of mathematics, whichever, is impersonal. Firstly, as I explained concerning God being spirit, according to our biblical history. I speak from that angle, and any according to, because some may dispute the fact that it is a fact, you see. But I say, according to our biblical history, God as spirit moved out and began his creation. When he began his creation, it was only through spirit and spirit alone, and hence, as the principle of mathematics, I stress and emphasize the mystery of God, and as the spirit was when it first began its creation, the principle of mathematics is impersonal, and the spirit was impersonal, if I speak after the manner of men, and in the language of them, and say concerning the spirit, as though it was and is not. Hence I say the spirit, impersonal and invisible. But God stooped from his lofty state of highness to say and to create the earth, and said, Let dry land appear, the earth being void and without form when it was invisible. But remember, though the earth was one of the lowly creations of the creative forces of God's creation, God formed man out of the dust of the ground, from whence he also formed himself in the name of the Son, if I speak after the manner of men, so they might understand. Hence the Word was made flesh from the flesh, that had its origin from the earth. You see the mystery. And that Word was God, as it is written, The Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word was made flesh. Hence God came so low as to make himself through and from and by the earth, bringing into visibility his majesty, though it was invisible in the beginning of the creation. Mathematics could be considered from that angle, and we speak of the principle of mathematics. We might use that phrase, which means the same. Mathematics, or the principle of mathematics, is impersonal. It has no form nor comeliness. It is as God was in the beginning of the creation. But yet mathematically and in the world of accounts we cannot do without the principle of mathematics. Nevertheless, when one imbibes the understanding and learns to master the system or the principle of mathematics, and allows the principle to be developed in them, that person is a mathematician, or they are mathematicians because they have developed that invisible something that brought it to fruition. Hence, they become to be a mathematician. In other words, the personification, the person of mathematics, of the principle of mathematics. As with that, so with God. God is with or without a body, but when through his condescension he takes on a body and develops himself in it, as was the experience of the body called Jesus, he was the Son of God. It was a degree of God developed, and that degree was to the sonship degree of God in the flesh. It was made flesh, and it was God, and men beheld his glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Father. So we do not necessarily have to especially depict God as a person, but with or without a body, or with or without a person, God is God, even as the principle of mathematics. But the principle is inactive in a way of speaking unless it is put forth into expression through and by a person. So it is with God from his majesty and from his omniscience. God is invisible and lies dormant. He lies dormant to the great universal scheme of things until he can put himself forth into expression in something visible or visibilated or tangibilate himself into outer expression. Hence, God becomes to be the personification of that which he is, or that which he was invisibly. The Word is made flesh. Father Divine's words from an interview granted to Mr. Maxwell Fisk in the office of the Peace Center Church, New York City, Friday, May 8th, 1942 ADFD. First, there is an infinite and impersonal mathematical field. It is as though God is latent, sleeping, folded completely within itself. This is the infinite and unchanging absolute reality. But consciousness grows out of this infinite potential and knows itself purely as consciousness, whole and complete. In a sense, math has become geometry. This is the absolute, impersonal God. But being potential in a single but infinite, harmonious unity, it must actualize and eternally points toward expressive manifestation. It orders itself toward this point. This point completes the self-realization of the Absolute. Infinity has become an infinite conscious personhood, the Logos, and contains the potential of all being. This is the cosmic person, the personal God beyond time and space, the answerer of all prayers under all names and forms, containing all the expressions of God that will ever manifest within time and space. God eternally realizes, I am. This cosmic person is the pre-incarnate Logos. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of humanity. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every one that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Logos was made flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John chapter 1, verses 1 through 14. Now the personal God has become Christed, or has become a Buddha, and looks back upon the waters, the metaphorical waters of their mathematical and geometrical potential, and calls that infinity forth by degrees into ordered manifestation. The latent idea of creation begins to be realized in time and space. The Logos blazes forth into endless, subtle, and material actualization, elemental force is unleashed, and God begins to be embodied. The first and last body of God is infinite light, Alpha and Omega. Through the medium of the one divine person, infinite potential passes into infinite actualization, and through light, spirit begins to embody and materialize infinite divine potential. The Logos manifests all universes and infinite numbers of persons who will each eventually realize themselves as sharing the essence of the Logos. Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." This is not referring to a personality in a particular time and place. It is not referring to a personality. It is referring to the unitive transcendence of personality, to the one I am. It's straight and narrow because there is only one I am. The incarnation of the Logos shows us what this looks like in human form. Father Divine is such an incarnation, and terribly important to us in this time and place because he comes in a manner that is comprehensible to us in this time and place. The narrow gate is a person who says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." The one Logos I am is who we really are, and all we must become. Nothing less than Christ, and nothing more than God. So the way is the I am. The gate to that is another body who has already realized it. So here in the chart, we see an infinity above and an infinity below. We see the infinite potential of God represented as an inverted purple triangle, and we see the Logos represented as a red dot at the tip of that inverted triangle. And below that we see the cosmic manifestation as a green framed triangle above infinite potential, with 10 dots here representing the infinite number of souls that come forth. This is a mirroring relationship, and mirroring becomes an important concept spiritually. We will return to that concept. Often at Father Divine's table setting, there was a both symbolic and functional mirror placed at Father or Mother's table settings. On the functional level, to see the activity from the kitchen, dishes being brought forth and so forth behind them, but on the symbolic level, representing those primordial waters, representing the image of God, representing the spiritual student's desire to mirror or reflect God as the moon reflects the glory of the sun, and so on. Creation is relational and grounded in love. From the start, let us make humanity in our image. It has been co-creative. At the heart of every being and relationship, from mere gravity or magnetism to the universal compassion of the great saint or bodhisattva, is the Logos, self-emptying love. Love is always coming through to us from the dimension of oneness, true love, true self-emptying love, the kind that can make room for the infinite God, is always coming through from the infinite realm. It is a unitive force from the unitive realm. The Logos descends into the clay. In each and every form and species, the cosmic person themselves becomes the first gas, the first stone, the first cell, the first plant, the first of every species of fish, bird, and animal, all striving toward their ideal image, the divinely human form. all that we see and all that we have been is the legacy of God's own primal self-knowing. In all infinity, there are no paths God has not already cleared before us, makes a way in the wilderness, to cite the language of Scripture. And when we say here the cosmic person themselves, and when we refer to the Logos reflecting on the primordial feminine waters, we are referencing in part the Elohim of Genesis, of the first verses of Genesis. Elohim is a plural for divinity. Elohim is not single. Let us make humanity. Adam means humanity, not only the male gender. Let us make humanity in our image and likeness. Plurality. So, the cosmic person themselves becomes all of these things in manifestation. And anything that we see manifest before us at any given time, or that we know to have been manifest in past time, or that will be manifest in future time, is already actualized in the fullness of the Logos. It is we who move through time, but the Alpha and the Omega, the Logos, the Christ, the God consciousness, the Buddha consciousness, this state of being is totally beyond time and space, except that it chooses, condescends to participate in it. In a sense, like a game, but a very sacred game. In a sense, like a pastime. Father Divine is on record saying that if everything were all right with the world, God would have nothing to do. Because creation is relational, we choose to be in relation with God. It may be that many souls choose never to merge into the final bliss of union, absolute union, because in that union the relational is dissolved. However, in that union the relational is contained. So you can choose to have your own relationship with God if you persist at the level of a saint and see God as outside of you to some extent. But if you go beyond that and merge with God, then all relationships are within you. And suddenly your own bliss of relationship with God is amplified or magnified, perhaps infinitely. Well, no, perhaps it would be magnified infinitely. So, this bliss of relationship, this relational and co-creational potential isn't lost. It's simply a matter of, is your consciousness in that game of manifestation, or has it transcended and therefore contains within itself all the fullness of that game of manifestation? So it's not a negative thing by any means. It's beyond comprehension and wonderful. Mother Spirit is the reflection personal God saw upon the waters, called out of him into being by his glance. In their mutual gaze, time and space are born. In each being he calls her into being and pledges his troth. Each fragment of creation is a drop of God in the ocean of the primal waters, waiting to be stirred and awakened. Each spark will inevitably pass through developmental processes involving millions upon millions of lives, eventually to serve and wed the I Am, ultimately to realize it is co-identical with the first person, God, the great I Am. But those primal waters are the Divine Mother, symbolically speaking, and the mirific potential that God looks out upon in that creative moment is the potential that becomes embodied as the Divine Feminine, Father, Mother, God, there united in propagating this material universe They are principles, cosmic principles, united in propagating this vast cosmos. But all impersonal principles may also be personified. The great medieval Persian mystic Jalaluddin Rumi says, "The truth was a mirror in the hands of God. It fell and broke into pieces. Everybody took a piece of it, and they looked at it and thought they had the truth." Rumi also says, "When the mirror of the heart becomes pure and clear, impressions of the other world will become manifest. The image and the image maker will become visible, like the carpet and the carpet spreader." Another great medieval Persian mystic, Mahmud Shabistari, writes, "Know the world from end to end is a mirror. In each atom 100 suns are concealed. If you pierce the heart of a single drop of water, from it will flow 100 clear oceans. If you look intently at each speck of dust, in it you will see 1,000 beings. A gnat in its limbs is like an elephant. In name, a drop of water resembles the Nile. In the heart of a barley corn is stored 100 harvests. Within a millet seed, a world exists. In an insect's wing is an ocean of life. A heaven is concealed in the pupil of an eye. The core at the center of the heart is small, yet the Lord of both worlds will enter there." Father Divine says, "There are 3 persons in the Godhead bodily, in other words, in the Godhead body, and those 3 persons, according to many of the different religions, are namely the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. But in this present dispensation and in this present time, God has taken unto himself his spotless virgin bride, reproduced himself in the name of his spotless virgin bride, to be known as Mother Divine." The New Day, 8th of December, 1951, ADFD, page 17. Father Divine also says, "My spirit will do it, for as in the beginning of the creation, according to the historians, it was spirit and spirit alone, without flesh, body, blood, and bones, moved out upon the face of the waters, and began that creation of all creation, and spoke into visibility and into outer expression the tangibilized earth as we observe it. It was marvelous to behold, no doubt, even at that time. God as invisible, speaking into visibility, the earth that was intangible and invisible, bringing it into observation, in other words, observable, observability, the earth itself having the ability to be observed. Aren't you glad? Yet it was the Spirit of the Lord invisibly, moving out upon the face of the waters, and speaking into observation the things of God's creation that were not observable." Spoken, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Saturday, 13th of September, 1952, ADFD. The Word of God revealed includes this passage. Father explained that Jesus walked on the water to prove that the Spirit that moved upon the face of the waters was in his identical body. Father said, "In reality, the body is consolidated spirit. It is the materialization of God, and God has the power to move on the face of the waters, and Jesus' demonstration of that power was his way of saying, 'My Spirit, or my Father, and I are one.'" Installment 2, dated 28th of September, 1931, ADFD. This is the dream. Thou sawest that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them into pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. Daniel 2:34-36. God alone is real. In the dispensation of Father and Mother Divine, and through their saving work via the medium of their material bodies localized on earth, heaven and earth are being united in an unprecedented way. A new heaven and a new earth are fully formed and manifesting now, from the inside out, light in extension, thanks to the saving work of Father and Mother Divine. Since year 1 ADFD 1946, a new humanity is being born without ancestral sin, bearing no personal complicity in the past. The number of such souls has been ever increasing. Born sinless and possessing deeper knowledge and awakened spiritual senses, the new humanity is even now actively replacing the old. Between now and Father's next advent, prophesied by him to be publicly known by the year 2525, the new humanity will entirely replace the old humanity and its failing so-called civilizations. So we can anticipate the processes of change that have commenced in our era will be completed after about 500 years. The parable of Eden tells us that we were created to be caretakers of the garden of God, but we desired instead to play at being lords of creation. We were created to be the angels of nature, the spirit gardeners of a planet that was meant to be heaven and the dwelling place of God in a body. But selfishness caused us to refuse our first appointment. We were given collective stewardship, not dominion. The long-prophesied fire next time between the old and new worlds is the Greek word peri. This word can refer to the heat of the sun, and therefore to epochal climate change. 2 Peter 3:7-8 tells us, "And by that same word the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, peri, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. Beloved, do not let this one thing escape your notice. With the Lord a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar, the elements will be destroyed by fire, peri, and the earth and its works will be laid bare." In this very age, we will learn to be the stewards and gardeners we were created to be. In the present age, cultures that do not come into harmony with nature's God will become extinct. Those attuned to the spirit of life will harmonize with the universal mind, unify as one global democracy, and heal our souls by healing the living earth and the social body. This is the purifying day of judgment. "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall." — 4:1-2. God has made this earth their home. Father and Mother have affirmed that they are present and are not going anywhere else. God is most powerfully present here and now on this very planet. Nowhere is the presence or revelation of God stronger or clearer than here, now. There is no heaven in the sky or beyond the grave, except that this world becomes our heaven. We are at the beginning of the restoration of Eden, which is being accomplished by God's will expressed in our living bodies. Spirit and matter are becoming harmonized and unified, fully synonymous. The city of God is descending, hatching, or opening from within to outward manifestation. It is a mistake to believe that Father Divine has gone anywhere. He has asserted that he has made the earth his home and is not going anywhere. If you believe that his work can only be accomplished if there is a charismatic leader, or if he personally returns in physical form, then you have misunderstood his teaching. He says that he appears only so that you will get the reality of the invisible presence of God. That is what he comes and suffers to awaken us to. If you feel that it can only be done with the presence of the body, then in the presence of the body, you would no doubt be concentrating on the wrong phenomena. You would be focusing on materiality, and you would miss the substance. God has made the earth their home. Father and Mother Divine are present. They are more present than they ever have been. They are doing their work. Their work is relative to the past, at its highest peak, and will go higher and broader in the future. So, there should be no nostalgia or missing or lack, want or limitation. That is not what Father and Mother are doing today. If that's what you perceive, then you're not with them. Our whole planet is being divinized. Before we close out this episode, I'd like to give some contrasting definitions of three basic theistic orientations, and doing so will help to explain why Father Divine's tradition is a monist idealist tradition, not a monotheistic, henotheistic, or polytheistic tradition. Monism is the idea that God alone exists. It's not that there is just one God, it's that God alone is real. Everything is, in some sense, a manifestation of God, and there is no other force to create or add to creation. Everything is a manifestation of God. The monist deity expresses in a multiplicity, an infinite, limitless multiplicity of persons. Infinitude and omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence actually require a monist deity. If you say that God is infinite, omniscient, omnipotent, or omnipresent, it really must follow, or your logic, reason, even faith, are not going to stand up to analysis. Really, infinitude requires monism. If that's not clear to you, then it's a mystery to contemplate, to meditate upon, until it does become clear to you. Monism is also requisite to universalism, to true universalism, and is the best basis for world union and multicultural democracy, which are certainly demands of the present age. Whereas monotheism, as it predominates in the mainstream understandings of Christianity and Judaism and Islam, God is a localized finite personality, separate and other from creation. A monotheistic God is culturally specific in the way that Allah is very much inflected with Arabic culture, for example. Any monotheistic God is going to be culturally specific and really comprehensible only to the mind developed within that culture. It's going to be foreign to others. Monotheism is really a medieval mythical emperor model, and the systems that it gives rise to are feudalist and imperialist, whereas monism provides an excellent basis for multicultural democracy. Monism was one of the things that unified the 42 separate tribes of ancient Egypt when they were pressed together in the Nile Valley through the desertification of the Sahara, and it's one of the things that has always made it possible for cultures to exist parallel in India, which of course is now the world's largest democracy. And in contrast to monism and monotheism is henotheism, which is the idea that there are many gods, but one of them is supreme or exalted above all the others. And really speaking, this is the view of a culture, popular religion in Greece, the way they treated the Zeus figure, the Deus Pitar, at the head of their pantheon. But it's actually the worldview of the Hebrew scriptures when you analyze it closely. Of course, that's been sort of ignored or edited out. But, they say such things as, I am a jealous God, thou shalt have no other gods before me, as though there are other gods. So really, henotheism is an early understanding that is displaced in Judaic tradition by a later monotheistic understanding, and that in the mystical tradition of Judaism is understood in more monist terms. Almost all religions that have a monotheistic fundamentalist mass following have some sort of mystical minority which either openly or in secret practices a monist tradition of unification with God.
Father really manifested the abundance of the fullness just by his consciousness.
Yes.
It was really his consciousness that produced the abundance. And we know that in the beginning God created all things. All things were made by God. Man had nothing to do with it. So there is a cosmic law that you can tap into that frees you from what man has been experiencing. But Father demonstrated it here. And as he demonstrated it here, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it can be done universally. As he said, he would do it. So, it's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to be open so you can tap in to this supreme consciousness that Father demonstrated, but he did not in any way confine it to himself as a person. But believe me, at least it's my conviction, his body was the key. His body is the key because he took our minds out of the sky.
Yes, he did.
And he really did spiritualize material things. He brought the spirit into the material and the material into the spiritual. He really made it one. He really made it one.
Wonderful.
And that's why it's so wonderful. We are a blessed generation to be living in this day. And we're super blessed if we are open to receive what will happen, whether we like it or we don't like it, or whether we believe it or we don't believe it. man is evolving. And it's just like the yeast in the bread. It's rising.
Yes.
And I like, and it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful to choose to believe the positive.
Yes.
Father Divine says, I am unifying myself with the children of men, that I might be one of them, if they will be one with me.